Welcome to True Crime 101 with Murder Friends, the podcast where three friends from three different countries talk about murder. My name's Hannah and I'm British.
I'm Anna and I'm American.
My name's Alana and I'm Canadian.
In addition to our longer episodes, True Crime 101 talks you through key true crime cases and theories. This week, I want to tell you about the murder of Jill Dando.
Oh, wow. Wow, big case.
Hello.
I love it. I'm here for this.
So you've both heard of it, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Right. So before we start, my sources came from the Commons Library, BBC News, The Independent, Wikipedia and The Guardian. Links to all of those are obviously found on our website. You can head over there and check them out. So do you guys know much about Jill Dando? Other than that it's quite like a big British
Yeah,
murder.
I know the story, and I know she was she a journalist? I don't know. I know she was and I know the crime, and I know a little bit more about it because it's been on, I think it's probably hit a lot of the different podcasts, where
it's recently been, last year was the 20-year anniversary of it as well. So
Wow.
it's been in the news quite recently as well. So, Alana, do you know much about it?
I only know the broad strokes. I don't really know any of the details.
Yeah, like the names, you're like, I know that name.
Yeah, I know the name and I know the basics, but no, this will be good because I really don't know any of the details.
So when I started researching this, so it was really one of the first ones that I remember when I was a kid, like when I was growing up. How old was I in 1999? 10? No. 10? No, how old was I?
1989. No, it's like this
me.
So you were probably 13, right? Because I was probably 17.
Yeah,
16
around
or
there.
17. I was
Yeah.
16. No, maybe I was 16 or 15.
Kind of young and useless. That's why I was kind of young.
12.
Yeah, so that was. This was one that I really sort of remember, in the news and it being a really, really big deal. When I started researching it, I realised that there's a lot more to the story than a woman being murdered. So, are you ready?
Buckle up.
So, Jill Dando was a really popular newsreader, journalist and presenter in the 1990s. She worked with the BBC for many years and at one point won their Personality of the Year award in 1997. She had this sort of short, blonde, 1990s hair. And in every single picture, she has this huge smile on her face. It was really one of those winning smiles. So Jill was born in Somerset in 1961 and she had an older brother called Nigel. Except for surgery when she was 3 to fix a hole in her heart, she had a relatively normal upbringing, but she had this dream of becoming a journalist and being on TV. So she started working for a local newspaper, the Western Mercury, as a trainee reporter. Her father and brother also worked on this paper. After 5 years, though, she started working for the BBC and then moved on to become a newsreader for BBC Radio Devon. She moved up to working for BBC South West and presented Spotlight South West, which was a television sort of magazine programme, news magazine programme. After this, the only way really was up for Jill. She crossed over from regional television to national television. She started hosting the short news bulletins that the BBC aired every hour. She worked on a number of programmes for the BBC, including Breakfast Time. She did the 1 o'clock news and the 6 o'clock news. She occasionally appeared on Songs of Praise. There was a travel programme called Holiday, which was quite popular, and she also hosted with another person Crime Watch in the UK. So in 1997, Jill met Alan Farthing on a blind date. Alan was separated from his wife, but when his divorce was finalised, he and Jill announced their engagement on the 31st of January 1999. They were due to get married on the 25th of September later that year. However, Jill was brutally murdered on the 26th of April 1999. She had left Alan's house that morning, drove her convertible BMW to her home in Fulham. Jill was trying to sell this property and she didn't really sort of visit it much, so she was going back to sort of check up and grab some bits. As she approached her front door though, and she went to put her keys in the lock, she was grabbed from behind, pushed to the ground, a gun was pressed against her left temple and a single shot was fired. Her neighbour, Helen Doble, discovered Jill's body 14 minutes later and called the police. Jill was rushed to the Charing Cross Hospital but was declared dead on arrival. It really was a murder that shocked the UK, and I really think that was for sort of 3 reasons. Firstly, she was very, very well known and very, very well liked. She was just one of those people that you saw on TV and it was oh, it's Jill, love that. Secondly, she was murdered on her own doorstep in mid-morning, broad daylight. And thirdly, she was shot. So I know we discussed this like on one of the main episodes of our podcast, but gun crime isn't really huge in the UK like it is in other places. I'm not saying that they don't exist, because they do exist and gun crime does happen. But last year, and this is for the year ending 31st of March 2019, there were 6,759 recorded firearm offences in the UK. But from those numbers, we can't determine whether a firearm was used in these offences and whether or not it was real or not. So it could just be like a fake or an imitation. And also that includes like air guns as well. So even then, the number could be less. Another neighbour, Richard Hughes, heard a cry from Jill but reported that he hadn't heard a gunshot. He is the only person who had a certain sighting of the killer, a white man aged around 40 years old and approximately 6 foot tall. So police weren't facing an easy task in looking for Jill's murderer. Her high profile meant she was in contact with a huge amount of people, but she was also well known to millions of other people. They launched a huge investigation into her murder, named by the Met Police as Operation Oxborough. However, a year later, the 2,500 people they'd spoken to and more than 100 statements were taken, it just wasn't getting them very far. A forensic criminal psychologist, Dr. Adrian West, provided the police with a psychological profile of who he thought could be the killer. Dr. West said that the police should be looking for a man who was an obsessive loner. This, along with other sources, led them to a man called Barry George. George lived around half a mile from Jill's house. He had a criminal history which involved sexual offences, stalking, antisocial behaviour, and attention-seeking behaviour. So an example of this was he was once found in Kensington Palace Gardens, hiding in a bush, and he had like a length of rope and a knife on him, and he was like dressed like in like full camouflage.
Yikes.
Like, So he was like a little bit of an oddball. George was placed under surveillance and eventually was arrested on the 25th of May 2000. He was placed on trial at the Old Bailey for murder. So the jury heard how he was seen in the area at the time of the murder. He had a history of violence and stalking women. Investigators found a single particle of gunpowder in a coat owned by George, and when his flat was searched, they found 4 copies of Jill's obituary. He was described as a fantasist. Once he pretended he was the cousin of Freddie Mercury.
Okay.
Right.
Random.
He also used the name Paul Gadd, which is the real name of the notorious paedophile Gary Glitter.
Ew.
Ooh,
Yeah,
not
no
the
thanks.
one.
He had a penchant for impersonating famous people. He once took the identity of a man called Steve Majors, and he claimed he was a stuntman, to such an extent that he convinced a stadium to put on a show where he would don some roller skates and jump over 4 double-decker buses.
Oh my god.
What?
Sorry? Like that, you said those words and I was like, I don't know if
I know,
that's
like,
what you just
I'm
said.
so confused.
I thought we were like going along a road, then all of a sudden it's like swerve into something else.
Yeah, like, what? Wait, what?
Yeah, but he injured himself during the stunt, so it went ahead.
Wait, so he actually
Went
went through with it? He
went
did it?
ahead and hurt himself. Yeah. 100%.
I mean, how many buses did he make it over? Did it say?
I didn't get that far, but now I
Like
want to
2.5?
find out.
Like,
We're gonna
where
make
are
it, like 1 bus? I wanted
know.
to know whether the buses were like nose to tail, where they were like next
Yeah,
to
like
each other.
next parallel. Like, are they?
That's
What are they
like-
doing?
Yeah, that's the difference. So anyway, he was found guilty of murder on the 2nd of July 2001 and sentenced to life by a jury of 10 to 1. There were a lot of conversations at this point about whether or not this verdict was correct. So do you think that a single particle of gunpowder and his prior convictions mean that he could have killed someone?
They're all completely circumstantial. There's no evidence there that he did it. That is terrible, actually. Whether he did it or not, it's
That's
awful.
scary. I mean, yeah, whether he did it or not, there is absolute reasonable doubt. Like,
Yeah, massive.
yeah, scary stuff.
So George's defence team obviously issued an appeal. This was dismissed in 2002 by the Court of Appeal. They concluded at this point that the verdict of the jury was safe. But this isn't the end. So in 2006, a further appeal was launched. This time his lawyers argued that there was fresh evidence that he could not have committed the crime because he was not mentally capable of doing so. So a neuropsychiatrist called Michael Kopelman concluded that George, in certain situations, could be aware of what was going on around him, but didn't know how to respond to that situation. And further, that George did in fact lack the mental capacity to commit this crime. So the crime was fairly, like, cut and dry. Like, it was very clean. It was very, like, well thought out. Sort of, like, waited for her to come home, approached her from behind, pushed her to the floor, one gunshot, and then you managed to leave no other physical evidence, and then leave the area without being spotted. If you've got an IQ, and it said that he had an IQ of around 75, which is really is low, could he have pulled it off? And also this single particle of gunshot residue was also questioned. It could be argued, and indeed it was argued by a forensic scientist who took part in the 2019 documentary on Jill's murder, that around 1 in 100 members of the general population could have gunshot residue on them. In their clothing, unknowingly transferred to them. The Metropolitan Police stated that no armed police were present at the time of George's arrest, which could account for this one little particle being transferred. But independent eyewitnesses state that there were armed people at his arrest.
Wow.
And I was thinking, if there were armed police there, this obviously could account for this transfer. But would you arrest someone, potentially for murder involving a firearm, without armed police there? Like, would you go to their house and be like, I'm going to arrest you for murder because you shot someone? Not nowadays. Like, you wouldn't... You'd take armed police with you just in case they were then armed.
Yeah, you don't just show up like in your work shoes and your nice blazer and say, "All right, you're arrested for murder for a really violent crime."
Exactly. Yeah, no. I would think that you would take armed police.
Well, I'm sure if there's a gun involved, or if they have a suspect that they believe shot someone in cold blood in the middle of the day, there's no way that they would just go there unarmed. That's insane.
Yeah, exactly. So there was a retrial, and this was ordered on the 14th of December 2007. He pled not guilty to the murder. The retrial began on the 9th of June 2008. He was found not guilty on the 1st of August 2008 and has since won damages from a tabloid newspaper, but he's been denied a claim for the £1.4 million of compensation as a result of his wrongful conviction. He is entitled to a judicial review, but this was concluded with a summing up from the presiding judges saying, quote, "There was indeed a case upon which a reasonable jury, properly directed, could have convicted the claimant to murder, and basically as a result, they denied him compensation."
Wow.
Because they said in your original trial, the jury could have been right. So, no compensation for you. You've spent years in prison.
Oh,
but he's out of prison.
God.
So with George acquitted, Jill's murder goes unsolved. And I think I know the answer to the question I'm about to ask you. But do you guys want to hear some theories?
Yes, please.
Yes, absolutely.
It was aliens.
Yeah. Lizard people? The Queen. No, it's
the
Prince
moon
Philip.
Doesn't exist. The moon's not real. Anyway. There's a True Crime 101 on conspiracy theories. You should go listen to it. So here are some theories. The first one is a scorned lover. So whilst the media pounced and trawled up Jill's love life because they are trash, the police did investigate each of her former lovers because sadly, statistically, women are more likely to be killed by a partner or ex-partner. So in 2018, 61% of the women killed in the UK were killed by men, and they were like a current or ex-partner. However, whilst police were initially positive, they kind of hit a dead end and everyone was ruled out. This allegedly included a Russian crime lord who was apparently besotted with her. She had met him in Cyprus while filming for Holiday, the travel programme, and when she rejected his advances, it's theorised that he ordered her murder.
What?
This story is like, you expect it to be straight,
it's like a TV
and then all of a
show.
sudden it's like someone's jumping double-decker buses on roller skates. Russian crime lords. But wait, it gets weird. There's also a theory that it was mistaken identity, so that Jill was mistaken for someone else. But bearing in mind this happened on her own doorstep, I think this is like less than likely.
Yeah.
There's the Crazed Fan Theory. So Jill was very well known, and her brother Nigel highlighted to the police after her murder that someone had been pestering her. But again, this theory was kind of ruled out. The next one is a UK-based hitman. So Jill presented Crime Watch. You know the format for Crime Watch, yeah. And there's a theory that an organised crime gang were getting frustrated by Crime Watch and the role they were playing in assisting the police. The police obviously investigated this route, but this theory was, again, ultimately rejected. So probably not a UK-based hitman. How about a Serbian hitman?
Oh,
ready?
Why?
So the Kosovo War was pretty front page news in the UK in the late 90s. Do either of you remember it? Like, was it on the news?
No.
No?
I mean, yeah. I mean, I
Yeah.
remember something in the
Remember,
background
like,
about
Bosnia? Like,
Bosnia,
the
that's
Bosnian
like
War,
a...
yeah.
Yeah.
That was all like the 90s. So for the Kosovo War, it's kind of complicated, but as with any war, there was a lot of people fleeing the areas involved because they feared for their safety. Plus, there was some pretty awful, like, ethnic cleansing fuckery going on. So less than a month before her murder, Jill hosted a crisis appeal to raise money for those affected, and they raised over £1 million in 24 hours. Then a few days before her murder, the Radio Television Serbia building was bombed by US and British warplanes, and they killed 16 people. The BBC's head of news, Tony Hall, received a sinister phone call after Jill's murder, and it said, this is the direct quote, "Your Prime Minister Blair butchered innocent young people. We butcher back." So the theory here is that a Serbian hitman killed Jill because she was high profile in the BBC. It's kind of questioned now whether the call to Tony was in fact a hoax or not. There have been investigations into potential hitman, all of who looked pretty clean. Like the Daily Mail did an investigation, high quality journalism.
Yeah.
High quality. And it's like, they were coming out as being like, oh, I was in Macedonia at the time of the murder. And it's just like, yeah, but surely you would have a fucking alibi if you were a hitman.
Yeah.
Otherwise you'd be
it's literally your job.
Hitman. Yeah.
Yeah, it's your job. So, like, you know.
Not get caught.
No.
Yeah. So on the hitman theories, the single gunshot to the head and the ability to like disappear from the area with few witnesses is definitely more of like a professional way of murdering someone. But the shell casing left behind and the type of gun they suspect were used are not usually considered to be behavioural use by a professional hitman. So again, don't know, probably ruled out. And the last theory is that Jill had investigated the possibility that there was a paedophile ring operating in the BBC in the mid-90s. She had apparently handed her findings to management in the BBC by way of a dossier. So but did this prompt a revenge attack? It might have been a bit of a bananas theory in the 1990s, but after the Jimmy Savile sex abuse scandal broke in 2012, it makes it a bit more of like a plausible theory. Like, you know. So it's been over 20 years since Jill's brutal murder. Hamish Campbell, who headed the investigation, said last year, on the 20th anniversary, that whilst they believed that they were days away from catching the killer, he thinks now that this case will never be solved.
Wow.
And that is the murder of Jill Dando.
Jeez, I didn't realize it was unsolved.
Sorry. So sorry.
Yeah, I do. Because I've heard some stuff about it, and I remember that there was a guy that was like wrongly convicted. That's kind of all I remembered. And actually, maybe I'd heard the Serbian idea about that too. It's really weird because you did a really good job. That was good. It's like, it seems like it could be professional because you said that she didn't stay at the house very much. So like they would have had to be like watching her, you know what I mean, or something, or tracking her, because it's not like she wasn't in and out of the same routine every day.
Yeah, and it's not like she had a routine and they were like waiting for her and like tracking her. Yeah, you're right.
So it's like, it could literally be any of those possibilities you just said. Any of them, you know,
Definitely.
Bar the guy that they convicted of it. I'm going to guess maybe not him.
Especially that it was in the middle of the morning, like broad daylight.
Yeah, it was like 11:30 in the morning.
That's like really ballsy.
On like a midweek day. I was like, I think that's terrifying. Truly terrifying. Like,
Fulham also, for people who don't live in the UK, Fulham's a nice area. It's a really nice area to live, isn't it? Yeah, like it's expensive.
Was it in the 90s?
I don't know if it was in the 90s.
Probably.
But I'm going to guess.
Probably okay.
Like, I know now it's quite expensive to live there. Because I've got a friend. It's really expensive.
So expensive.
I don't know about then. But then I'm going to guess she would have made a decent amount of money. She wasn't going to live,
Oh, yeah, she was one
anywhere
of them.
shit. So I'm going to guess it was still probably decent then. And then it was just like, but they didn't even like push her into the house and like
steal anything.
You know what I mean? Or try to cover up or like make it quiet and make her not be found. They like just did it in broad daylight.
And left her on the doorstep, yeah.
Wild.
I think it's horrific.
And you're also right in the fact that like stuff like that just does not, like we just don't have, the gun crime doesn't exist here in the UK. There's just not a lot of it. And if there is something, it's huge.
Yeah, gun crime's pretty like shocking in the UK. I find it shocking anyway. I mean, but had quite a sheltered up.
Like so the most recent thing I can think of with gun crime is like did you guys, I don't know if you heard about this, Alana, but there was a guy in the Medway area that was like standing up on a balcony.
I did,
shooting, and people were, did you see that? I think it was Chatham.
He was, I think it was like St. Mary's Island, like dockside sort of area, and he was standing on the balcony firing. They found out that it wasn't real bullets.
It wasn't even a real gun. It wasn't even a real gun. Like, that's how, like,
but it was
shocking.
Really, because you're like, sorry, what? Like, this doesn't happen.
Yeah, he was shooting, and people were, I think he was really high on drugs, like super high on drugs. And because there's videos of himself, he's like filming himself that were like leaked of like the shooting. And then there's people, I know, shooting a fake gun. And it was ridiculous. Well, I mean, it was just, pointless. But anyway, that's like the thing I can think of. And it wasn't even a real gun.
Yeah. I mean, there was one, it was actually nearer to where I live, years and years ago though. And someone got shot in the chest with a sawn-off shotgun.
Oh my God.
And it's like, I thought I lived in a fucking nice area. Turns out, don't at
That's
all.
the thing. If you do hear about the gun crime too, it'll be like a hunting rifle, because you can't get like automatic. I mean, obviously they are in the country. We're not stupid. Of course they are, and the wrong people have them. But luckily, because you can't obtain them as a general public, they're harder to obtain.
Yeah.
There's
a lot more like shotguns.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, because you can hunt.
Yeah, and it's like my number one goal in life is to have a shotgun license. But you need to get people to like sign a waiver saying that you're of good like sound mind and everything, and I literally cannot find anyone. James will not sign one for me, which I think is rude.
Yeah.
I just want a license. I don't want a gun. I just want the license. But like handguns, not really a thing.
It's not a thing here.
They're here, but you're not visible. So yeah.
No.
I mean, you're not even allowed to carry like any
knives.
kind of you're not allowed to carry anything really. No self-defense, so you're not allowed to carry mace or pepper spray. It's the same thing. You're not allowed to carry any like knives or anything, like no concealed weapons. So
yeah, I think.
Shocking.
The other gun crime I remember was, do you remember the MP? Wasn't she an MP? That was really sad because she was quite young and she was shot a few years ago.
Joe Cox.
Yeah, Joe Cox. Yeah, by a mentally unstable person.
That was a modified gun, wasn't it?
It was a modified,
homemade or something.
Homemade, it was
really upsetting.
Yeah,
so that's
really
why I think like
upsetting.
gun crime in the UK is really shocking, and so especially when it happens to like high profile people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, that was really good. I didn't quite know all those details as well, so that was good.
No, me neither.
Double-decker buses, you learn something new every day.
Yeah. I might have to Google that after. I want to know how far he made it.
I know. I kind of like, I was like writing it and I like typed it out and I was like, I need to go back to that and like find out some more information, and then like never did. So probably got distracted by something shiny.
All right, that's all I think we have for today. Check out our website at murderfriends.com. You can find all of Hannah's sources there. You can email us at murderfriendspod@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram at murderfriendspod and Twitter, murderfriendspd. All right, we'll see you next time. Bye.
Just very, very quickly, if you Google Barry George double-decker bus, there's a fucking video. Get on it.
Well,
right now.
I know what I'm doing after this.